Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. It is now 2 p.m. and I would like to call this meeting to order. I will now hand it off to Jackie, who will go over some Zoom protocols with all of us.
Thank you very much. So we are using Zoom again for the third time for this Toronto AGM. Voting will take place on your computer screen or on your monitor. You'll have a choice of yes or no. The vote will be open for about 30 seconds and then I will announce the results. If you do have any questions, please use the Q&A function located at the bottom of your screen.
Thank you, Jackie. So we are ready to move on to going over our agenda. I would like to put forward a motion to adopt the agenda as presented. Could I have a seconder, please?
Okay, and we will go to a vote. Actually, I'll ask, are there any amendments to the agenda? I'll wait a minute or so. And if they're not, then could you please vote by clicking one of the two buttons in front of you? Thank you.
Sorry, Graham, I was a little quick with the poll there. I'll give everyone a few more seconds to vote. Looks like the votes are in. I will end the poll. I will share the results, and that motion does pass.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. So we are ready to move on to the land acknowledgement at this time. I'd like to pass it over to Louise Kent.
Hi, everyone. Yes, we begin our AGM today by acknowledging that the land on which we each live, work, and play is the traditional territory of many Indigenous peoples, both recorded and unrecorded. I'm present today on this beautiful day in Leslieville in Toronto, a settler on Treaty 13 and part of the Upper Canada Treaties, protected by the Dish with One Spoon Agreement in the traditional territory of the Wendat, the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, Chippewa, Métis, and the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. And I want to specifically acknowledge and honor the lands of the Niagara Escarpment, which the Bruce Trail traverses. We recognize it as the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Huron-Wendat, Tionontati, Attawandaron, Haudenosaunee, Métis, and we give thanks to all those who provided stewardship of these lands over millennia, lands of which myself, my children, my family are guests and caretakers. Recognition of the contributions of Indigenous peoples is consistent with the Bruce Trail's commitment to making the promise of truth and reconciliation real in our communities. Yet we are also mindful of the broken covenants and the need to reconcile with all our allies and relations. Together, we can care for this land and each other, drawing upon the strength of our mutual history through peace and friendship to create a lasting legacy of conservation for generations to come. Rhea?
Great.
Thank you, Louise.
Okay, so I'd like to welcome you to the 2022 TBTC AGM. And for those who may not know me, I am Graham Allen, the president of the Toronto Bruce Trail Club. This year, we were truly hoping to go back into having an in-person AGM. And we had to make a decision at the end of January whether to commit to the Court Rights Center for an in-person AGM. And given the uncertainty regarding COVID, we opted for another and hopefully last virtual AGM. And so we are back again for the third year. I want to thank you for attending today's event. We have over 100 registrants, which is consistent with our last two virtual AGMs. And just as a comparison, when we last had our in-person AGM, which was 2019, we had about 150 people, and hopefully we'll be back to that number again in 2023. I'd like to express gratitude to Megan Kroll and Jackie Rendell of the BTC, who have taken time out of their weekend to help facilitate this AGM. We rely extensively on the BTC to help us host this virtual AGM through registration and through their Zoom network. So thank you very much to Megan and Jackie for helping us with the AGM today. Actually, it's more than helping. I think they've almost facilitated the whole thing. They've done a great job. I'd also like to thank Ria Reskina, who did the call to order today. Ria is the TBT secretary, and I really like to acknowledge the refresh AGM package that was posted more than 30 days in advance of this AGM, and also for this refreshed or actually revamped AGM slide deck, which you're going to be enjoying today. So Ria, thank you very much for all your creativity in this, and it's really great. We have a packed agenda today, which you saw on which was shown on slide number 2, and the agenda includes this year's club highlights. It includes the volunteer recognition and our guest speaker, Skid Crease. Anyway, let's proceed with the agenda. So Ria, back to you for the minutes of the AGM 2021, and thank you all.
Thank you so much, Graham. At this time, I'd like to put forward a motion to adopt the AGM minutes from 2021.
I second that, Ria.
Thank you, David. Are there any adjustments or amendments to the minutes from last year? Okay. Can we go forward with a vote then?
I've launched the poll, and we'll just give it about 30 seconds for people to vote. Just give it a couple more seconds. Usually the voting does start to speed up the more times people get used to it. I will end this poll and share the results, and that motion has passed.
Thank you. Okay, we can move forward to the president's report. Over to you, Graham.
Thank you. Okay, so agenda item 5, the president's report. My report was included with the AGM package that was distributed via e-notes and posted on our website. So I'm not going to go through the whole report again, because I'll assume everyone has read it, but I would like to touch upon some highlights. And so after 4 years as your president, this is my last AGM as president. And I'd just like to reflect on some of the notable accomplishments over this year and over the past. Your club has gone from strength to strength, and for this I'd like to acknowledge the work of the current board of directors, which include Marlis Butcher. I don't know if you're able to do a virtual wave of the hand, I'm not sure, or to say hello.
Hi, everyone.
Okay, Margaret Corner.
Hello.
Louise Kent, Alina Lynn.
Oh.
Okay, Janet McColeman. Oris Nahachevich, unfortunately, he is unable to be with us today. Peter Pritchard, think hello, Peter. Ria Reskina, our secretary. David Boyle is there.
Hi, everyone.
David Rowney.
Hello.
Yeah, Laurent Thibodeau and Juliet Williams.
Hello, everyone.
Okay, thank you for that. So this year we're saying goodbye to Janet McColman and Ors Nahachevich, whose contributions I have appreciated over the last few years. The board and its volunteers accomplished much this year, of which the following I'd like to really especially recognize. We have our new website, which I hope you've gone and had a look at, which you will clearly be impressed with. It is a really quite a, I'd say, a work of art and a work of creativity. We have the new BTC Unified Hiking Listing Calendar, which we provided significant input to the BTC, and they worked with us to incorporate some of the unique characteristics of the bus hikes, which is unique to the Toronto Club. We now have a Google Drive to facilitate distribution, storage, and retrieval of club information. And the other part is our club finances are in good order, as they always are. Last year at this meeting, we responded to one member's request at the AGM, who asked if we could put up, if we could have bios of each board of director on our AGM. And so in response to the member's request, you will notice on the club website, there is a brief bio and picture of each board of director. So that was really a really good idea. There's strong commitment and cooperation between us, our club, and the rest of the clubs, as we meet about 3 times a year with the BTC CEO, Michael McDonald, and the other club presidents. And this is a forum for sharing ideas and working through common issues and just getting to know your other club presidents. We have a strong land management committee, which includes biodiversity, land securement, trail maintenance, and land stewardship, which goes to the heart of the mission of the Bruce Trail, which is to preserve a ribbon of wilderness for everyone forever. So as part of the BTC's mission to preserve a ribbon of wilderness, the TBT assisted in the purchase of 3 new properties this year, which includes the Duff Pit and the soon-to-be new main trail reroute, which will remove the trail from the 6th line and Highway 7. And so that will be a significant addition to the optimum route. And we're all looking forward to that later this year. There are many accomplishments over the last 4 years as president, but I think the one I am most proud of is the commitment and the action to diversity and inclusion, which the club has taken over the last, I would say it's really accelerated over the last couple of years and even more this year, which you will hear later as the year progresses. And I think this is really important because it represents it's more representative of our membership and the GTA of which we are part of. Anyway, we have a stable board of directors that has a healthy planned annual turnover, which basically creates, brings in new people and new ideas. And the board is receptive to implementing new ideas while preserving the best traditions of theirs. So I think it's a very healthy position for the club to be on. Anyway, this may sound cliche, and I know you people have heard this, but it's been a pleasure. It's been an honor. It's been fun to be the president, and I have no regrets, and I think it's been great. And I also have to commend the club and the board of directors and the membership for persevering through COVID. And I'm anticipating we will be out of COVID very soon, and we look forward to seeing everybody in person soon. Thank you. Okay, so over there. Okay, so I'd like to call upon, so that was there. I'd like to call upon our treasurer, Margaret Corner, to present the treasurer's report, which is always a highlight. Go ahead, please. Go ahead, Margaret. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Graham. So I'm going to start off by reviewing some of the highlights of our statement of revenue and expenses. Membership fee revenues this year were $2,600 over budget and $2,300 over the 2020 actual amounts. Due to COVID-19 restrictions, we were only able to hold one bus hike this year, whereas last year we held 2 bus hikes and 8 winter coach hikes. None of the special events that we had planned occurred. The club had budgeted for these events to resume in the fall of 2021, which unfortunately did not happen. Accordingly, both the revenues and expenses are below budget in these categories. We had a record number of hikers earning badges in our section this year. 429 regular end-to-end badges, 73 side trail badges, and 196 of our new winter end-to-end badges were issued during 2021. Several of these hikers made generous donations to our club, for which we are very grateful. Badge expenses reflect the introduction of 1 new hiking badge this year, our new side trail badge. We also had to reorder 600 regular end-to-end badges to meet demand. Trail maintenance expenditures were well below budget, mainly due to the deferral of the replacement of the boardwalk near the 6th line. The Dufferin Gap Bridge was inspected at a cost of approximately $9,000. Our trail maintenance volunteers worked very hard this year, repairing various boardwalks and bridges, as well as clearing a new side trail on the recently purchased Duff Pit property, which included 2 elevated boardwalks. The club also purchased a battery-operated chainsaw this year to help with our trail maintenance. As Graham previously mentioned, one of the club's major undertakings last year was the updating of our website. Our new website was successfully launched in early 2021 and accounts for the majority of our web expenses in 2020. Website expenses in 2021 reflect the final costs of launching the new website, integrating the registration system with that of the BTC, annual maintenance costs, and new pages that we've added to the website. At the end of the day, our surplus was $5,378 for the year, which included a $10,034 donation to the BTC. I'm now going to move on to the statement of financial position. Can I get the, thank you. So the statement of financial position is a picture at a point of time of our club's financial health. So you can see that at the end of the year, we were in a very healthy financial position. The club was holding $50,462 in cash. Receivables in the prior year included December membership and trail maintenance fees owing from the BTC. These receivables have decreased from the prior year because at the end of the year, we owed the BTC $6,160 for monies they had collected on our behalf for a trip to Val David. Unfortunately, this trip was canceled in early January of 2022 due to a fire at the venue. The net of these amounts is shown in the amount due to the BTC. Prepaid expenses remain unchanged from the prior year and include a deposit to the Courtright Center, which will be applied to our next annual general meeting scheduled to be held in April of 2023. So that concludes the highlights of our financial statements. At this point in time, I'd like to propose a motion that we approve the financial statements for the year ended December 31st, 2021 as presented. Can I please get a seconder?
Oh, it's Marlise Butcher. I'll second it.
Thanks, Marlise.
No, I'd like,
Can we have a poll to vote, please?
no, I'd like to, it's Graham. I'd like to ask if there, I'd like to ask if there are any questions of Margaret. If there are, could you please use the chat function? And the question is specific to the financial statements that have just been provided by Margaret. I'll wait a minute to see if there's any questions in the chat that are submitted.
Graham, it would be the Q&A function. Sorry.
Oh, Q&A.
Slight-
Thank you.
Slight correction.
Thank you for setting me straight. Okay, there doesn't appear to be, oh, there's one question here. There's one question, I'll ask it. The question is, Margaret, how do our assets compare to other clubs? Can you answer that? Are you able to answer that?
I really haven't seen all the financial statements of the other clubs to comment.
But I don't, what I can say to answer to this person is a discussion is our cash position is at the higher end of compared to the other clubs. And that's also consistent with the Toronto Club having membership of all the 9 clubs. And also, yeah, and that's one of the reasons. And also the other part is that our cash position, as Margaret well mentioned, is that our trail maintenance expenditures are less than expected this year, are below plan. And so from an asset perspective, our main asset is cash, and our cash is higher. It is at the higher end of the range compared to the other clubs. Okay. So just looking at the Q&A, I don't see, oh, one more, no. Okay, I got one more question here, Margaret, to you. It says, where do donations show up? Okay.
So the donations are reflected in our statement of revenue and expenses. Jackie, if you could flip the slide for back one, please. So you'll see right at the bottom there, yeah, where Jackie's highlighted, we had the donations to the Bruce Trail Conservancy of $10,037 last year.
Okay, and our financial statements are, our financial year end is on a calendar year end. So these financial statements are from January 1st, 2021 to December 31st, 2021. Margaret, that was the second part of the question. Okay, I'm just going to see, wait a minute. Okay, thank you for those questions. Being no other questions, I'd like to, I think we've had a proposer. We did have a seconder on here. We've had the questions. Okay, could we please have the vote? Could you please, yes, go to the vote.
Okay, the poll is open and we'll give it, again, 30 seconds. Looks like most people have voted. I'm going to end the poll and I will share the results, and that motion has passed.
Great, thank you. Okay.
So now I'd like to provide a brief overview of our 2022 budget. If I could get that slide, please. So the Board of Directors met in early January to review the various board member and committee submissions and a draft budget. The 2022 budget forecasts a deficit of $5,545, which includes a donation of $20,000 to the BTC. We have not budgeted any major fundraising events, in 2022. We have budgeted for $7,150 in trail maintenance expense, and the majority of this expense is for lumber to be used in structural repairs on our section of the trail. We're also planning on hosting a landowners dinner for which we have budgeted $5,800. And this 2022 budget was approved by the board in mid-January through an online vote. So that concludes my treasurer's report.
Thank you.
And I'd like to pass it over to Graham.
Thank you, Margaret. Our next agenda item is the director's reports and questions. And those were distributed to members on Wednesday, March the 9th via e-notes and posted on our website. Our constitution requires that these reports that the AGM package be distributed at least 30 days prior to the AGM, and AGM being on April the 10th. So the director's reports were included in the package that was distributed to you. And as we asked members to submit some questions in advance if they wished regarding that package, and we did receive some questions and we have responded to those questions. Right now, we'd like to open it up using the function, the Q&A function. For those who have any questions that they would like to ask regarding the director's reports or any other questions regarding your club. Louise Kent, our membership secretary, is going to modify the session, and we will do our best to answer all the questions that are submitted. And if we're unable to either answer the questions because we don't know the answer, or if we run out of time, all the Q's and A's will be posted as part of the minutes on our website. So I'd like to open it up now to the membership to ask any questions.
No questions yet. We do have one hand up. So just a little reminder that the chat and the Q&A function, they're two different functions. So if you are trying to submit a question, there's two little bubbles there and it says Q&A. If you raise your hand, unfortunately, we won't be able to identify you or your question.
Okay.
Nothing yet.
Well, guess we'll wait a minute or so, and if no questions, then we'll move on. Okay, I gotta say, going once, going twice, gone. Okay, well, if you wish to, if you think of a question, you can submit one during the meeting, and we'll try our best. Okay. Well, thank you. I'd like to turn this over to Marlis Butcher, our TBT volunteer coordinator. Marlis has been hardworking in regards to the volunteer awards, and this really is a highlight of our AGM. So Marlis, over to you, please.
Oh, I thought we were going to do the nominating committee report first.
Right, you are quite correct. I just wanted to give you a little advance plug. Sorry about that, David.
No problem, thanks.
David Royal, nominating committee report, please.
Thank you, Graham, and welcome everyone. Before I announce the board, I would just like to acknowledge the members of the nominating committee who have done a great deal of work to support this process. And they include Margaret Corner, Jackie Van Dyke, and George Lennon. It gives me great pleasure to introduce our board. The Toronto Bruce Trail Club Nominating Committee present a slate of 13 members for the Toronto Bruce Trail Club Board for 2022-2023. And as I announce the names, I would kindly ask the board members to say something and raise their hand. So I'll model this. David Royal as president. Graham Allen as our wonderful past president and the club representative to the BTC board.
Thank you, David.
Moving on to our new vice president and our membership director, Louise Kent.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, David.
Next up is Margaret Corner, our treasurer.
Thank you, David.
Moving forward to our secretary, Ria Rasquina.
Hi, everyone.
And now our land acquisition and landowner relations director, Peter Pritchard.
Afternoon, everyone.
Our trail maintenance director, Laurent Thibault.
Hi, look forward to see everyone on the trails.
Our communications director, David Rowney.
Hi, everyone.
Our public relations and education director, Alina Lin.
Hello, everyone.
Our volunteer coordinator, Marlis Butcher.
Thanks, David.
And our special events coordinator, Juliet Williams.
Hello, everyone, and thank you, David.
Thank you, everyone. All of those people are returning board member nominees. And now we have a very warm welcome to our first time nominations. To the chair of the Land Management Committee, a warm welcome to Neil Stein.
Hi, everyone.
And to our new hiking director, Tom Swales.
Thank you, David.
Wonderful, wonderful. I would like to propose a motion to approve the report of the nominating committee, and I'm going to ask for a seconder.
I second it.
Thank you, Alina. And we can now vote on this, please, Jackie.
Okay, the poll is now open. Votes are coming in. I'll just give it a few more seconds just to make sure everyone has time to vote. Okay, looks like everybody is done voting. I will end the poll and share the results, and that motion has passed as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, David, for your report, and welcome to Neil and Tom to the board. Okay, Marlis, I gave you a little advanced standing before. Now we're following the agenda order. Over to you, please.
Okay, thank you, Graham. So this year, the Toronto Bruce Trail Club is pleased to thank and honor the following special volunteers. So for the Todd Bardis Volunteer Award, which is given annually to outstanding persons who have made significant volunteer contributions to the TBTC in the prior year or two. Each volunteering, such volunteering could be in the areas of trail maintenance, hike leading, social event planning, communications, administrative tasks, fundraising, and board service. This year, we received nominations for some very special volunteers. Margaret Corner, our club's treasurer, Andrew Prosjak, a dedicated hike leader, and David Rowney, our club's communication director and Halton Hills chapter liaison. The Todd Bardis Award Committee is made up of prior year's awardees, and they had a hard time selecting this year's winner. In the end, they selected David Rowney.
Yay.
Congratulations, David. And thank you for all the work you've done. I'm going to read out loud to everyone what the nominators wrote about David. And so here it goes. Throughout the year in which David has served on the club board of directors, David has provided impetus to keep projects moving forward, leading by example, and creating a space for others to bring their best to the table. As the communication director of the TBTC board, David Rowney has significantly improved and refreshed the club's communications channels, including website, social media, and newsletter. He has also acted as a trail captain and the representative of the Halton Hills chapter, and constantly takes part in trail maintenance activities. He led the club's new website redesign project, initiating the project, forming the working teams, selecting the vendors, coordinating with the Bruce Trail head office, and moving the complex project forward. David is also the primary website master and has written, edited, and updated over 40 articles and pages since the website was launched. And he contributed to the development of the advertising strategy. He has integrated and revitalized the club's social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, which were infrequently used and almost died in 2020. After David stepped up as the communication director, he brought them back to life by creating content and having the social media team post identical messages all over all the social media 3 to 5 times a week. To offer in-time updates about the trails, he has made frequent visits to the trails to acquire firsthand information and to take photographs that were used in our social media updates. Over the past 2 years, the followers of 3 social media sites have been increased by approximately 20%. So a big thank you to David. On to the Nina Carlisle Volunteer Award. This award is given to a longstanding volunteer at least 5 years who is actively involved in the activities of the Toronto Bruce Trail Club. Such volunteering could be in the areas of trail maintenance, hike leading, social event planning, communications, administrative tasks, fundraising, and board service. This year, we received only 1 nomination, but it was for a very extremely outstanding volunteer. The Nina Carlisle Award Committee, made up of prior year's awardees, were unanimous in their agreement in honoring Rosemary Mitter. 2022 is Rosemary's 20th anniversary of volunteering with the TBTC. Rosemary started this work as a trail captain in 2002, and in 2007 volunteered as the club's interim trail development and maintenance director. After 3 years, she found she couldn't attend the club board meetings anymore. So in 2010, she stepped down as the director and created a position of trail captain coordinator to help reduce the trail director's workload, a job which she's still doing today. Over the years, Rosemary has trained and managed the hundreds of trail captains who've maintained the trails. She also manages the trail inspections and trail status reports that the trail captains must submit to the BTC 3 times each year. Rosemary herself still steps in as trail captain when no volunteers are available for any sector. Rosemary also organizes many trail maintenance work parties and has volunteered on almost all that she hasn't led herself. In addition, she continues to be instrumental in designing and developing most of the club's new trails and reroutes since 2007. Rosemary joined the club's land management committee at its inception in 2007. She therefore probably knows more about our trails and our history than any other volunteer. Rosemary is a keeper of the TBTC trail and land ownership information. Therefore, Rosemary does not furthermore, Rosemary does not hoard her knowledge because she is very aware of the importance of passing on historical information to new volunteers. In 2021, Rosemary became the club's land stewardship director, guiding the 15 land stewards who manage the BTC-owned properties in the Toronto section. They deal with encroachment and misuse of properties and document species at risks and invasive species on those properties. The club's biodiversity team, which is overseen by the land stewardship director, Rosemary, works towards eradicating invasive species and replacing them with native ones. So congratulations and a big, huge thank you to Rosemary. Both Rosemary Mitter and David Rowney will be receiving letters from us because we can't be giving them their thank you gifts in person this year. So they'll be receiving letters and with a choice of gifts very shortly. Thank you so much.
Great. Congratulations to David and Rosemary, both very deserving. So that's great. Laurent, over to you, please, for the Trail Maintenance Awards.
Yes. Hopefully we'll have some images there. If they're not coming up, I can just talk about the individuals.
It's up there.
Yeah, there they are. So terrific, thank you. Well, the Trail Maintenance Volunteer Award of the Year, we decided to give it to John Borley. He is just an amazing contributor. He always shows up whenever I put up the call. He does it all. He's down there in the mud, in the muck, trying to level boardwalks, building new ones. He's been out with me many times in the cold this winter to cut down trees that were blocking the trails. And he's traveled in wilderness trips all over the world, and we're very fortunate to have him as part of our gang here in Toronto. Thank you so much, John, for everything. One little quirk that I always noticed about John, doesn't matter if it's 30 below, he never wears a hat. So he's a tough dude. And I guess Marliese can confirm that because I think she's been on wilderness trips with him as well. So congratulations to John, and thank you so much for everything you do to keep the trails clear and safe. There should be another montage of, there we are. There's 3 people that I'd like to highlight. Certificate of 5 years to Jude and Helen Keast. They are stalwarts on the trail, always contributing there with the reciprocating saw, whatever you need. The last session we had with him was cleaning out the locker. So they're just terrific, and great to hand you this recognition certificate. The other one for 5 years is to Peter Pritchard. Peter is the consummate diplomat and relationship person with our landowners. He's the kind of guy who just kind of has a friendly conversation with you, and whatever he asks of you, you can't resist it. I recall several walks on the trails where Peter would saunter up beside me and say, oh, and then Laurent, by the way, do you know that Marliese is retiring and we need a replacement for trail maintenance? And just let that idea sit there. And the next time we're out and he says, oh, by the way, And eventually I give in. And so it's been great. Peter's a great friend, a terrific contributor, self-starter, fixes things without anybody asking, and just a great member of our team. And of course, 20-year certificate of participation to Rosemary. Lots been said about her already by Marlies. She is amazing. She is the epitome of the friendly, competent, dedicated Bruce Trail volunteer. She's a warm and friendly person. And she got me hooked when one morning we were out on a trail maintenance work party, and she shows up with homemade strawberry jam, which she handed out to everybody. And I said, well, if that's the kind of people I'm going to work with, I'm going to become a trail captain as well. So she's a great recruiter. Just very pleased to recognize her as well. So these are the people that we wanted to recognize this year. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Marlis. Thank you, Laurent, for that. And congratulations to David, Rosemary, Jude, Rosemary again, Peter, and John Borley for your awards and recognition. I'd also like to recognize that Jude is our badge coordinator, and I think what turned out to be a volunteer job is almost a full-time job, combined with end-to-end badges, youth badges, and now the winter end-to-end badges. And as per Margaret Corner's report, you can see that it's been a really busy year, and the prior year too for badges, all due to COVID. So thank you to Jude for all his work on being the badge coordinator. It has been a huge amount of responsibility. So thank you for that. So I'm going to ask, we're going to move to item number 10. I'm going to ask if there is any other business that members would like to transact or propose for this AGM. And if you'd like to raise an issue. Oh, here comes one on the Q&A. Okay, that wasn't a question. That was a great show. Oh, sorry. Okay. And we're having both audio and we're having the visual on this too. So if there is no additional business, I would like to propose a motion to adjourn the TBTC 2022 AGM, and I'd like to ask for a seconder, please.
Hi, this is Dave Rowney. I second this motion.
Super. Okay, Jackie, a vote, please. A motion.
We'll see if anybody disagrees.
Okay.
Give it a few more seconds here. Okay, I'm going to end the poll and share the results, and that motion has carried.
Okay, that's got unanimity. Okay. Thank you. That concludes our business until next year. Well, our formal business. We're always open to questions. You can always submit questions to info@torontobrucetrail.club. And that is monitored by Magdalena Vanderkoy, who receives the questions and then assigns it to the people to respond. So the board is always open and receptive to questions. So we had put down here a break time, and I would say that since we are ahead of schedule, I would suggest if our guest speaker is ready to go and the rest of us are ready to go, I would suggest we just continue with the agenda. Okay, okay, let's see if there's anything else in the chat line here. Okay. Okay, I'll turn it over to David Royal, please. David?
Thank you, Graham. It gives me great pleasure to introduce our guest speaker, Skid Crease. Many aspects of pre-COVID life are returning, such as the gradual reopening of our hikes. And there is no better person to highlight the beauty of our landscape than Skid Crease. We must remember that for many of us, coming back to hiking is always a pleasure. And there is not a better person I know who can help us on this journey and launch our new year. By way of introduction, I'm going to ask Jackie to please now play a video of our wonderful guest speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Skid Crease.
So, we want a little inspiration to deal with climate change, do we? Well, the first way we get inspired is by coming out into this incredible wilderness of ours along the Bruce Trail. And we share it with our family and our friends so that they develop a sense of wonder. And once we begin to reconnect like children in the woods once again, we realize that we love this. And you know, we tend not to screw up the things we love. We tend to take good care of them. So when we walk along the trail, we begin to become more familiar with this community of life around us. In fact, we might even take out a field guide. Now ask yourselves, if we've got field guides to all of these species and animals, birds, plants that sit around us in these nature trails, what would a field guide look like for the environmentally literate citizen? Now, we know how to find the environmentally illiterate. They're throwing their trash out the windows of their cars. They're leaving their trucks idling in downtown Ottawa for 7 days at a time. We know how to find the illiterate. But what would the literate look like? Well, they'd have a conserver lifestyle. We'd all be driving a Prius, or a Prime, or a plug-in, a hybrid, an electric vehicle. We'd be living the conserver society life, learning how to live elegantly with less. Now, where else do we get our inspiration? We see it in the eyes of the children that we walk with. We see it in the eyes of people like, and the words and actions of people like Severin Suzuki, of people like Greta Thunberg, who've taken the world on the stage and told us adults what they'd like us to do with their planet. But we also see it in the eyes of the children that we have at home. Our students, our loved ones, our own offspring, neighbors' children, walking in the woods and sharing this. That's what gives them awareness. And they become curious. And that's what leads them to knowledge. And then, when they discover that some of this is at risk, they want to take action. Now, what kind of action do we take? Well, we become conservers. The conserver society, learning how to live elegantly with less. We make sure that we don't vote for right-wing, populist governments that only are interested in the economics and not the environment. And then we get ourselves out with a group of people we love. We share these incredible wilderness scenes with them along our very own Bruce Trail.
Okay.
Over to you, Skid Crease.
Oh my gosh. Well, I have to give great apologies to Rick Mercer. My wife made me swear that I would not try to use his Newfoundland accent during this inspirational keynote. The Bruce Trail has been a part of my life as long as I can remember. It certainly has been a part of my teaching life for as long as I can remember. And given only 15 minutes to leave you with, although there's lots of time left, is it? And I could go on because I'm a storyteller. I had to write down notes because I wanted to make sure that I hit all the points for you. I remember reading a long time ago, if you want to teach your children well and you want them to be healthy, keep them close to the wild. And in order to be close to the wild with your children, you have to feel comfortable in the wild yourself. And there's only one way to do that, and that is to immerse yourself into the experience. If it's a first time, obviously the bus tours you have organized for Toronto, hopefully they will start again, is a way of taking a group of people out together and sharing that experience along the Toronto Bruce Trail section with them. What does a walk in the trail do for us? Well, if we take a look at your very own Bruce Trail magazine this last month, the last edition was Restoring Nature and Ourselves. Now, outdoor educators and people who love the wilderness have been doing this for years. Walk down a trail, a walk in the woods. Steve Van Mater used to call this acclimatization. Now the current catchphrase is forest bathing. But really what it is a chance to put ourselves into that environment and not necessarily know every scientific description and the taxonomy of every plant, but to feel it, to feel the wonder of the diversity of life around us. And I think that is the biggest gift that the trail gives to the people who walk it. A spectacular landscape all the way from Niagara Falls to Tobermory. I've done most of it. I don't like to do the road sections anymore, but I'm going to share some stories from the trail with you that hopefully will get across the idea of why we need to keep doing this for ourselves and for our children. And if we think 2021 was an interesting year, just look what 2022 has started out like. So more than ever, we need a place to heal the soul, to provide space for our minds, to just clear for a while, to change the channel. And I think these stories I'm going to share for you primarily come from students that I have worked with, but they were ones that focused on me the absolute necessity and importance of taking our children out on these trails and ourselves. So first we get comfortable and then we share it with the next generation is going to protect and care for, become the trail stewards of, become the volunteers for this organization right across from tip to tip. And I have to say, just watching this online meeting, I'm used to doing live presentations. So I feed off the visuals of my audience. You just sense it. It goes back and forth, which is very difficult to do unless you're watching Louise Kent on the screen. So this is, yeah, very animated. So when we take this journey down the trail, we're actually going back in time. We're going back in time to the last glacial age. So we're taking a walk through thousands and thousands of years of geological history and ecological evolution that is absolutely brilliant in its diversity. I worked at Monocliffs Outdoor Education Center for 10 years, and the rare ferns that we would encounter that I had never heard of before were absolutely astonishing. And a walk through there with a very old geologist whose name's Walter. Well, anyway, it was amazing to walk with this man who knew rock and knew the history of rock and knew the history of the cliffs and all the, he'd point out a seashell and say, you see this seashell, Skid? This seashell was embedded in the bottom of an ocean thousands of years ago. And the earth shifted up. And now we find this seashell 80 feet up on the Niagara Escarpment Cliff in the Violet Hill Spillway. Walked with a biologist named John Riley, who knew more about plants than I will ever know, and shared the secrets of the exchanges between plant and the nutrients and the forest around it. If you haven't read the book yet, The Hidden Life of Trees really tells us the story of the exchange that goes on between the pheromones of the trees, the root systems of the trees, the microbes that are produced in the soil, that when we walk down the Bruce Trail surrounded by forest, we are imbued with that exchange of chemicals and fresh air and information. It just surrounds us. So we wonder sometimes why we feel more peaceful after a walk, more restored after a walk. And it's because the forest gives it back to us if we stay in tune with it. The stories I wanted to share with you come from my early days of teaching. The very first one was back in the, this would be the 1970s, when you could actually go 15 miles to 15 miles, then it was miles, early kilometers, between a campsite to a campsite. And there was spring water. There was an area to pitch a tent. You could have a group. So we would take 27 deschooled grade 8 boys every year on what we called the turkey trot. And it was not after the wild turkeys that surrounded the area. It was after the wild boys that we took with us out on the trail. And we would start sometimes down in the Caledon section and finish off frequently up through the Blue Mountain area. In some of the most spectacular terrain. Now picture hiking at the end of September and all the incredible color across the top of the Niagara Escarpment, hiking out around the Blue Mountain section and looking out onto Georgian Bay. So we had inner city kids that were just blown away by all of this. That experience with those boys and watching the change in behavior that took place in them was absolutely astonishing. They'd start off on Monday as the Rat Pack, and they would finish off on Friday as a tightly wound group of teammates who cooperated, worked together, understood each other, and supported each other when they got back at school. That hike turned out to be the best student counseling program that we ever had at the schools I taught at. And I'll give you an example. So every student got assigned one of the staff members who went on the hike as their mentor. And it was understood through the school that any one of those kids could come and see us at any time if they were stressed out at school. So I would frequently get a knock on my classroom door. I go out to the door and I said, "Excuse me, class, it's one of my kids." And I, "Okay, yes, Mr. Crease, it's one of my hikers." So we go to the door, I'd open the door and say, "Ryan, what is it?" He said, "God, Mr. Crease, if I have to spend one more minute in that math class with Mr. Russell, I'm gonna kill him." I'd say, "Well, you look a little upset, Ryan. Do you remember that Tuesday morning we hiked in the pouring rain all day?" "Yeah, and we got to our campsite, everything was soaked, the wood was soaked, and we had to wait till the next morning to get breakfast going on." "Yeah, but we did it, didn't we?" "You think you can take one more day of math class?" He'd go, "All right, Mr. Crease, I can do it." Bruce Trail, guts and glory. So that was one. The second one is related to my experience at Mono Cliffs Outdoor Education Center. We had a group of English second language students that had been brought up for sensory vocabulary development on the trail. And my job as the storyteller was to take them out, find a place in the woods off to the side of the escarpment and sit down and have them absorb the environment around them. So I would space them out safely around on a log in the woods. And most of these kids had never had quiet time. They'd all come from, in this case, these were all kids from South America who'd fled the horrors of Guatemala, and they had been, I don't know if any of you know this, but they frequently get detained in a detention hotel for up to a year, and then into a school, into an apartment block that's highly protected for them. This was their first experience out in the Ontario wild since they had been here 2 years. So we sat down in the forest, and I get choked up when I talk about this because it was so meaningful to these kids. This one girl came up to me after and she said, "Mr. Crease, this is the first time I have felt like I have a home again." And that is what sitting in the wild, just taking that quiet time and absorbing it, says to her, this is our home. This is our real home. It's why you work so hard to protect it as a club. The second experience comes from closer to Toronto, and all of you being from the Toronto area will appreciate this. There's a wonderful ravine that runs through where I ended up my teaching career, having left Zion Heights to go back to the deep inner city to prove that I could still teach, and or left sort of Mono Cliffs. Hiking my students down, we have rehabilitated an entire section of the Black Creek Ravine with a wonderful project from the Toronto Conservation Authority. Kirsten Geeter was the name of the young volunteer who helped us. She taught our children all about riparian species and bank erosion and floodplain protection and the importance of protecting that section of the watershed. And we went out probably 3 times a week with her every morning and planted and dug and cleaned and right from September through to the cold weather coming in. The next year, my next class I took down and we continued the project. And that year I had a young boy in my class from Afghanistan, Zakaria. And Zakaria spoke no English when he came in. He wanted so badly to go on those hikes. He mastered English in 3 months. And so then it was wintertime. So we did our normal winter things. Springtime came and Zakaria could not wait to get out. So I took the class down on the first hike. We had all our gear with us. We had our shovels, our saplings and everything else. And the first thing I used to do, like any good teacher who wants his class to focus, is to find a safe, protected place to let them run off the pea and vinegar. So you have to get all that energy out and then they'll sit down and listen to you. So there was a beautiful meadow stretch. It was partly parkland, partly by a walkway. I said, okay, go. And the class took off and Zakaria is holding my hand very, very tightly. I said, Zakaria, it's okay. And he said, I can run? I said, yes, you can run. He went nuts. He was jumping all over the meadows, climbing the trees and leaping around everywhere he could, screaming, I love Canada. I love Canada. And my class all stopped. They'd never seen Zakaria been polite, quiet. They'd never heard a noise out of him in class. They all gathered around me as they did, the storyteller. They all gathered around. What's happening? I said, I don't know. I've never seen this. Zakaria, until he ran out of energy, bounced around, came down, he sat down, he's out of breath. And David Francis, who was my little street guy, my tough little street guy, David looked at Zakaria and he said, Zakaria, weren't you allowed to do this in Afghanistan? And Zakaria said, without missing a beat, he said, oh no, the landmines. That was the biggest global lesson I ever had in my life. They said, what do you mean the landmines? He said, well, we couldn't walk anywhere. We couldn't leave certain protected areas. The Taliban had shot everything up. They'd shot all the trees down and we couldn't walk because of the landmines. I don't think I had to teach another history lesson all year after that experience. So the value that we take for granted, walking protected in that forest on a trail that we can step anywhere we want on that trail, all the way from Niagara Falls, all the way to Tobermory, is a gift. And it is a gift that we are duty bound to protect and to share. I made a sort of a joke at the AGM rehearsal. Believe it or not, your board is incredible. They spent so much time I have never prepared so much for a meeting in my life. So they are, if it takes a community to raise a child, it takes a really good board to raise a Bruce Trail Club. So I made a comment about the old boys class. I said, I looked at the diversity on the board and I said, it's really nice to see a change in the youth and the wit and the diversity on this new board. I said, quite a change from the old boys club. And one of the members said, well, you know, the old white club does pretty good too, you know. And I reflected on that when I got home. I thought, you know, it was the white old boys club that really taught me all that I knew about the wilderness. My dad, who was a white old boy, my dad taught me everything I learned to love about nature. My uncles, my camp director, that was a base because it was part of the culture, I think, of Ontario at the time. We did not recognize the diversity that sat around us in the city. All those kids that went to summer camp came from a certain part of our Ontario culture. And when we look back, and when I look back at the classes I taught in Toronto, that is the world. That is the diversity of the world that's coming to Toronto. And it's not all white kids. It's children from all over the world, many from cultures who've never had exposure to this kind of a trailing system before, this kind of conservation ethic before. If you've come from a Syrian refugee camp, the first thing on your mind is food, water, shelter, and love. So learning how to take care of nature may be a little farther down your list. I think this ties in with the last story too, which I wanted to share with you. It was a school that I had been getting ready to come to Mono Cliffs Outdoor Education Center, preparing them for their first wilderness invention in this incredible field center. So I had said to the parents, who were quite a mixed community, I'd said to the parents, we're getting ready to take your children to camp. And so I want you to be well prepared. And I had a slideshow already. And the principal leaned over to me and he said, Skid, where many of these parents are coming from, when you said you were taking the children to camp, meant they never were seeing them again. And I went, oh my God, I'd never even thought about the language I was using. So then I began to think about when we had our Six Nations exchange up at Mono Cliffs Ed Center, and we talked about taking them to our residential center. And one of the elders had come up to me and said, we don't talk about residential centers anymore. And I went, okay, I get it. So the slow dawn of awareness sometimes, as we make our reconciliation and make it meaningful, as we recognize that the lands we walk on and take for granted are a gift from the First Nations exchanged in the Wampum Belt Treaties. And the Wampum Belt Treaties were not a sale. The Wampum Belt Treaties were a promise from us to them to be stewards of the land and to take care of it. And I don't know of any organization that does a better job than the Bruce Trail Club. So I'm gonna close. I'm inspired already. I don't know. I'm gonna go and take a hike in a minute. There's a gentleman who wrote I don't even have to read it. He wrote a book years ago. If you ever get a chance to find it, it's called Crossing Open Ground. Can you see that? It's Crossing Open Ground by a beautiful nature writer named Barry Lopez. Nature writers who can make a landscape come alive with their words on a page are very few and far between. And this man can make you breathe in the landscape he's writing about. So he was writing about when he, and I don't know how many of us on the Bruce Trail are like this, when I got to know the names of a lot of things that were going, I felt so proud of myself. I could identify different species of birds and different species of fern and different species of trees and knew the geology of rocks. I couldn't wait to share that knowledge with anybody I came in contact with on a hike. So Barry recalls upon being trained as a naturalist. And he said in the early days, just learning the taxonomy of everything was the most important thing, and that being able to share that incredible depth of knowledge. And then he said one day he learned it wasn't the name of anything at all that really mattered. It was understanding it and observing it and looking at it and wondering about it. So he said very slowly when he began to take hikes, the more hikes he took, he stopped naming things. He would sit down with the group in the woods and they said, what flower is that, Barry? And Barry would say, I don't know. I've never seen that before. No matter how many times he had seen it, he would say, I don't know. I've never seen that before. Let's take a really close look at that flower. What would you call it? And the children or the adults would all come up with a name. Oh, that's the 5-petaled white starflower. I like that, said Barry. And that's what it became for them. He said, now, some scientist probably somewhere has named that thing. So if you really want to look up a different name for it, you could check your field guide when you get home. But remember what this flower looks like so that you'll know what to look for. And then he wrote an essay called Children in the Woods, which is an absolutely beautiful essay. And at the end of that essay, he concludes with a story about taking a young boy on a hike, and they were down in the sand in the pond on a hot July day, and the sun was shimmering over the water and the sand was kind of pulsating. And they found the footprint of a great blue heron in the sand. And Barry got down on his hands and knees and the child got down beside it. And Barry was just marveling at it. And he didn't realize that the child was looking at him. And the look said, I didn't realize until right now what a wonderful experience it is to be alive in the presence of all of this. Not until right now. Another beautiful writer named Father Thomas Berry concluded an incredible book years ago called The Voice of the Earth. And the words he used were, and this has become my motto, that for centuries, we have not been listening to the voice of the earth. It is time that once again, we joined in the grand liturgy of the universe. And if there was any year and any time that we need to do that once again for ourselves and for our communities, it's right now. So join in that grand liturgy of the universe. Get your club to sing together with your hikers and your children that get out there and celebrate this Bruce Trail of ours and this world we have while we still have it. And that's the way I see it. Thank you. How do we do on time?
Skid, would you, I got a comment here and I'd like to read the comment that I received to you, and then would you be receptive to a couple of questions that people wish to submit them, please?
In the state of, no, sure, okay, shoot. Go ahead.
No, that's great. So I got this comment. It says,
just a sec. By the way, if you want to know why I'm so emotional, my wife has been in Brazil for a month on a teaching assignment. I have been alone at home with the border collie, a 1-year-old border collie, which is like being with a kindergarten class of 25 ADHD students, but you don't get to go home at 3:30. So I'm a little emotional. She's home right now over there. Okay.
wow.
All right, go ahead. I'm ready.
Great border call. Okay, so I got this one. It says, not a question, just a comment. It says, what a privilege to listen to Skid Crease's story about the Bruce Trail. Thank you for making me feel the forest and people's experience in nature. Very special to share your emotions. Well, the next comment the next comment we received that said, very, very inspiring. Thanks, Skid. And so what I'd like to do is thank you to those people who've submitted. I'd like to, Skid has graciously agreed to answer any questions or comments. What we'll do is we'll leave it open for a minute or two to see if anything comes in. And yeah, then we'll go. And the border collie, those are great dogs. Can we see him or her?
I have to apologize too. That little crazy rant that was done as a joke for David. Was you might have noticed the border collie running ahead on the trail. I never let my dog off leash, but my poor wife was trying to hold the camera, the dog, and he released. So we apologize. It won't happen again.
Well, Laurent will probably talk to you as trail maintenance director, but otherwise it's all. Okay, I'm just waiting to see if any comments come in. We got another appreciation. I'll just wait a minute or so.
Can we just chime in?
Please.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I was thinking what an inspiring message for all of us to keep working on the trail. I'm on the trails all the time and meet families and people, and they are indeed so appreciative of being able to get out in nature, particularly during the pandemic. It was a lifesaver for a lot of people to go out in a place that was relatively safe. And the sad thing is that so many people around us in Mississauga, Brampton, and so on live in very dense urban areas, and they get so few opportunities to go out and appreciate nature, so they lose the connection. They can never see the stars at night because there's too much light, and so on and so on. And I think as a human species, I think 80% of people live in cities now. That to me is probably going to be our downfall. We just lose connection with the natural environment around us. It's just a comment that Skid sort of caused me to have.
I have one more comment here. It says, I love Skid's stories about introducing new Canadians and our diverse cultures to the trail. Does the TBC have any programs to promote this with schools? I'm a grade 7 teacher in Toronto, Rexdale, also a diverse area. So Skid, I'll let you answer that, and then I'll turn it over to David Royal to comment about or Louise, comment about what we're doing in Toronto. So over to you first, Skid, please.
Yeah, I am quite astonished. The Toronto Club is maybe unique in having a diversity statement, an inclusion statement as part of its club agenda. So if you look in your history of the Toronto chapter, you'll see the Black on the Bruce program, the initiative that was started, and David Royal can connect you with information on that. Whether or not the Bruce Trail information gets passed on to schools, I'm not sure, because when we went out as schools on the trail, we sought it out. Most of us were Bruce Trail members. And so our goal was to share this with our students, but I don't recall any program coming into the school. So David, could you speak to that?
Yes, certainly, Skid. And I just want to make mention, once again, you've inspired us, Skid. I was new to Canada myself as an immigrant in 1984.
Yeah.
So you were the first person I saw and heard speak. And you inspired me to move forward and to be the best I could be. And that's our intention with connecting with the diverse population of our wonderful, wonderful city. I think our board reflects the multicultural aspects that are very much in tune with what you have described. Those stories that you've told us are inspirational. So that's something our board will be going towards, is to connect with schools as a new vision for our team. Thank you, Skid.
Okay. So Skid, I have another question. You've already got followers. And this is a serious question. It says, where will Skid be hiking later today? We'd love to join him anytime. So I don't know if you have a blog. It says, Skid will be here at 3 p.m. Please stand by. So that's a question I just got. How would you like to answer that, please?
I have never put that on my blog, but I would be happy to put out little hiking clippets. Usually I do, because of the dog right now, with my wife being away, I've been doing the section closest to Caledon right now. But one of my favorites still is through Mono Cliffs and north. But I also had a friend who was down in the Grimsby area, the Balls Falls area, and exposed me to some of the trails down in there. And that was quite enjoyable. If you want to do a Toronto hike together, to heck, when we're outside on the trail, 6 feet apart, we don't need a mask. You can go there, you can actually see another person's face, which is really unique. You can identify species and tell if they're smiling or not. So yeah, you know what? I think I will start putting that on my blog. And by the way, since I corrupted David Royal when he first arrived in Canada, and I apologize, David, for all the bad things we did to you that made you an outdoor lover. I will get in touch with David and let him know if we're getting even down to the Toronto area, where we'll be next. But if we've got something planned on a weekend, I'll get him to put something in, and I would love to see some of you out there on the trail. It would be a privilege. Okay.
So thank you for that. So to answer that question about where will Skid be hiking later today, it's pardon?
The Palgrave Forest Side Trail.
Okay, Palgrave. Okay. One more question. It says, just to follow up, we're going to Albion Hills Outdoor Ed Center end of the month. But what about getting parents and whole families involved? And so I'll take that question. So there is, to this person, if you submit your interest under volunteer at Toronto Bruce Trail Club, the Toronto Bruce Trail Club is looking for volunteers to some extent for trail captains, and I don't want to take up a lot of time, but Rosemarie Mitter looks after that from trail captains. And so from this person who submitted the question is that a family or a group of people can submit to apply to be a trail captain, which requires them to do light maintenance and some trail audits 2 to 3 times a year in regards to their trail, and just to be stewards of that trail, to do light trimming, light maintenance, and just report any down areas and just sort of supervise that. The other part for families to become involved in, as we mentioned, is the Toronto Bruce Trail Club introduced a youth hiking badge last year, or I think the year before, and it is for those who are 13 and younger who hike at least 2 hours or 3K on the Bruce Trail. They submit their log to the Bruce Trail, to Jude Keast, and the information's all on the website, and they will receive a badge at no charge. And so that is our way of encouraging families and youth to take advantage and to experience nature. Okay.
Graham, just that is from the same teacher who submitted the first question about the grade 7 class in Rexdale. So it sounds like that youth badge is probably a great opportunity if you're there for that amount of time. Graham, you're muted. I think I see you speaking there. Yeah.
Yeah, so submit those questions through info@, and the information, you will find out more about how to do that. Okay. I think one more, and then we're going to turn it over to Juliet. One more question. No. Yeah, person just commented about the badge is a good idea. Juliet, over to you, please.
Thank you, Graham. Well, Skid, I'd like to say thank you for your inspiring and informative storytelling. I love stories. I can listen to stories all day. Thank you also for reminding us about all the ways nature nourishes and heals us, our mind, body, and spirit. So we're all connected to nature. Also, the importance of inviting the world to the trails, to nature, because like you said, it is a gift for all of us. So I want to thank you for bringing us, bringing our presence to that, and all the work that you do. I admire you. I love your storytelling, and it was such a pleasure having you here today. And thank you so much. I am fully inspired. I'm a nature lover. One of the things you touched on, the importance of bringing our children to the trail, because when you start young, it becomes embedded in you. It becomes a part of you. And we all learn to take care of nature together. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Great. Okay, thank you for that. Could we go to the next slide, please? So, I'd like to thank everybody for attending. I'd like to thank Jackie and Megan for helping us to facilitate this AGM. Skid, for your inspiration to all of us and get everybody charged. You already have your followers out there that you're a minor celebrity now on the trail. People want to come out and meet with you. I'd like to thank all the members for attending and taking time out on Sunday. And we're really looking forward to meeting in person on Sunday, April the 17th at the Courtright Center. And I'm thinking 3 times the charm, but in reverse, that I don't think we'll have to do virtual anymore. We can go back in person. We can have some spontaneity. We can have some social time, and we can have our hikes that are associated with the AGM. So thank you very much for attending, and we look forward to seeing everybody next year. This ends the AGM.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks all. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.